Okay, so we're looking at mixed exercise 6 from the first year core textbook. So we're on circles and we're looking at question 13. So it's a problem solving one. So I've got a circle. I'm told it's center. Well, I'm not told it's center. I'm going to have to find its center, but they define it as PQ. I've got the radius, and then I've given two points on the circumference of the circle. And they tell me Q is 0. Sorry, Q is greater than 0. So I suspect at some point I'm going to get two possible values for Q, and one will be positive and one will be negative. So they're just telling me which one to use, but kind of jumping ahead. Okay, so I think there's going to be more than one potential way of solving this. The way I'm going to go for is to say, well, I know generally the equation of the circle is x minus a all squared plus y minus b all squared equals r squared. Okay, so for this one, they're telling me that the centre is x coordinate of p and a y coordinate of q. And they're also telling me that the radius is 25. So I can say that that equals 25 squared, so 625. Okay. So that's the equation of the circle, and then they also give me two coordinates. So if I substitute each of those in, I am going to have simultaneous equations that I'll be able to solve. So the first coordinate they give me is -7, 0, and I think the fact that these are the same magnitude is going to be quite helpful. We'll see how we go. So when x is -7, y is 0. Okay, so I'm gonna, you possibly might have been able to skip this step depending on how far you've got with this question. I'm going to square those first set of brackets out. So just be really careful with those negatives. So you need to just do this, you're working kind of somewhere separate. So I've got -7 times -7. I've got -7 times -p, so that's going to be plus 14p, and then I'm going to have two of those. And then I'm going to have -p times -p, and then the minus q all squared is q squared, and that equals 625. So we'll come back to that, okay? Because then they also give me 7, 0. So 7, 0, so that's going to be 7 minus p all squared plus, again, 0 minus q all squared. So if I square out those brackets, I've got 7 times 7. I've got 7 times -p. Oh, hang on. Sorry, I won't do that again. I went a bit overboard there, didn't I? Double twice. That should just have been plus 14p. Right, so that's going to be minus 14p plus p squared, and then again, q squared equals 625. Right, so I know they look quite nasty, but, and this goes back to why it was very helpful they gave us the -7 and the 7. If they'd given us sort of completely different coordinates there, or y wasn't 0, this would have been a very different question. But I'm looking to eliminate p or q, and if you look at what you've got in those two highlighted equations, in fact, if I write the first one down underneath it, if I subtract one from the other, everything is going to cancel apart from the p. So if I don't know, the highlighting really makes a difference, but let's highlight that. So if I do the green minus the purple, I've got 49 minus 49. I've got minus 14p minus another 14p. I've got p squared minus p squared, q squared minus q squared, and 625 minus 625. So I end up with p equaling 0. Now, that might be a bit off-putting, but I'm actually feeling pretty confident about that because they told me that q was greater than 0, and I think that's because we're going to end up with two possible values for q, but they didn't mention p. And obviously, I've got a quadratic in p as well. So the fact that they didn't have to tell me whether p was positive or negative is actually making me feel pretty happy about that answer. And there's absolutely no reason why the centre can't be at x is 0. So there's absolutely no problem with that answer, although I know it's a little bit off-putting when you get 0 out. Okay, so if p is 0, well, so let's go back to the green one. So if p is 0, that's going to become 40. Let's move the whole thing up. So I'm looking at the highlighted green one. So if p is 0, that becomes 49 minus 0 plus 0. So you don't have to put those. Plus q squared equals 625. So q squared I get as 576. So if I square root 576, I'm getting plus or minus 24. And of course, it told me that q is greater than 0. So q must be positive 24. So that's why I'm actually feeling pretty, even without checking it, I'm feeling pretty happy about p being 0, because I think otherwise they would have told me whether p was positive or negative. Okay, and then find the coordinates of the points where the circle meets the y-axis. Right, this I think is going to be a little easier. I think this is just some bonus marks for making it this far. So now we know what p and q are. So p was 0, so that's just going to be x squared. Q is 24, so that's going to be y minus 24 all squared, and that equals 625. And scroll that right up. Find where it meets the y-axis. Well, it meets the y-axis when x is 0. So that will just become y minus 24 all squared. I'm going to square root, not forgetting plus or minus. So y is either minus 25 plus 24, or y is 25 plus 24. And do be careful, it does say points, so we are expecting 2, but they asked me for coordinates, so I must give those as coordinates. So they would be my final 2 answers for part B. Okay, let's quickly check those. P is 0 and Q is 24. Cool.